All right, well, it is probably time to address the elephant in the room. So it's been since August 2021 that I've released a podcast episode, and yes, there's a very good reason. And guess what? That's what today's show is. A bit of a comeback, really, but mostly just an explanation of what happened and how I've dealt with it. And it's not supposed to be somber or negative or anything like that. So, I'm genuinely happy to be back, and here we are. But I want to thank everybody that's emailed and messaged me over the last 6 months or so asking what's up and offering genuine words of encouragement to come back. And we're going to cover actually a few of those during the talk today. And I say we because I asked my friend Rob to come in and act as my sounding board as I kind of talk through everything. He's a really good listener, and I thank him for doing this one with me. And with that, I'm not going to produce this thing anymore. There's not going to be any music or whatever today. So without further ado, let's get right into my talk with Rob. All right. Well, here we are. Rob, here we are.
Yes, it's that time of the year again, where
February?
we chat. Yeah, it's kind of cold here in Chicago. In fact, I just got through blowing a few inches of snow off the drive and sidewalk and things, and but it's less than 30 days until the first day of spring.
Yeah, I live in San Diego. I heard that seasons exist in other places.
No, well, they do. I mean, and you should be here in the fall when all the leaves come down. You almost need hired help to get them all off the grass before the snow comes.
I love Chicago in the fall.
Oh yeah, it's kind of nice.
Actually, I miss Chicago a lot. I haven't been back in like 15 years, but it's actually one of my favorite cities. I love Chicago.
Well, we met that one time at O'Hare when you were passing through going to Michigan, I think, or something.
Yeah, I went to Kalamazoo to record Spy Week.
Kalamazoo, where the zoo is.
Yeah, the fabulous Air Zoo.
I wonder if Kalamazoo actually has a zoo.
They might. I bet they do. They have a university. They might have a zoo. Yeah. Well, anyway, no, I mean, I used to go there all the time for, my wife went to Northwestern, so, you're a little familiar with that. And I've probably driven by your house like 100 times and just never known it.
That's probably true. She was a Kellogg person, right?
Yeah, partly. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Well, you were Medill, right?
I was Medill, and
is there a rivalry there? I wasn't aware.
Oh no. I just raised it for a point of differentiation. No, there's no superiority intended in that statement.
It's funny because there is one with Purdue, so
yeah,
always fun.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. It's all these big schools all have rivalries. That's what makes them tick.
Yeah, it's not a Big Ten without rivalry.
That's right.
Good times. So it's been a while since we did this before.
Yes, as Sam Sanders says on his show on Saturdays here in Chicago, it's been a minute. Well, it's actually been a couple of months, hasn't it?
I think it's been like 6. It's been like half a year.
Everybody's been a little busy hiding from the germs and that sort of thing.
I know. Well, the thing is, I've gotten quite a few emails as in like where you been. So there's 2 things to that, but I suppose it's probably time we tell everyone. At least I do, and that's why you're here. You're my safety blanket.
I see. Okay. So what would you like me to? Well, so what can you tell us about the last 6 months, Mr. Gonzalez?
Well, on or around the time the last episode aired, which is kind of fun. I can't go into too much further details as unfortunately there's still an investigation pending, but I was involved in an aircraft accident, and it kind of, as you might imagine, has sort of upset my relationship with aviation to some degree, and I am coming out of it. I will be back, and I always knew I would, but I got to say that our sort of aptly named last couple of episodes that we did called Enthusiasm sort of sum it up, because just when I thought I had it back, I probably could have done without that.
I imagine it would suck out the energy from the air. But let's be serious here. The good news is that you and your buddy were okay. The airplane didn't do so well, but you're okay, and nobody else got hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there were a lot of tough calls that had to be made in a split second, and ultimately, I feel like I made the right ones. Not in a I'm great, I did whatever thing, but just in a your training kicks in, your experience kicks in, and you just sort of intuitively have to go with your gut at that point when you have so little time to think. I will say it was an engine failure, is what happened. The cause is still pending. I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but it was an engine failure, and not caused by us. It was a mechanical failure, and when I can speak more about the details of it, I will be happy to do so. And of course, the NTSB report will be on the public record when that does come out, but it's probably still going to be at least half a year till that happens. But anyway, yeah, we had to make a lot of choices in a quick amount of time. I took it and I did what I had to do. And, my goal was to minimize damage to ourselves mostly, but then also property damage to people on the surface and injury and things like that. So we were over a populated area, which is unfortunate. We were at, just offshore actually, near. So we weren't over it, but we were within all regs as far as minimum altitudes and all that. It was the best of times for it to happen, and it was the worst of times for it to happen because we didn't have a whole lot of options. But as luck would have it, the one option we had was actually the best one. And going back, if it had happened at any other time during that flight, it would have actually gone a lot worse. And ultimately, there was a lot of luck on our side. Really, I guess is sort of the tired point I'm trying to make. So, yeah, we walked away from it. Actually, we ran away from it because there was fuel everywhere. One of the wings broke off. There's fuel gushing out everywhere, and we ran as fast as we could. But ultimately, we're okay, and there was minimal damage to property on the surface. Nobody was hurt besides us, just a couple scrapes. And the plane, you're right, the plane will never fly again, unfortunately. But ultimately, the insurance company can have it, and that's pretty much that.
Well, again, the main thing is that let's touch on the points that you mentioned about the training kicks in, and it just happens. You don't really even have enough time. What altitude were you at again when that happened?
We were at about 1,800 feet.
Okay, and so a Saratoga with no motor probably comes down rather quickly, even with the gear up, doesn't it?
Well, actually, it's a Cherokee 6, so yeah, the gear's down and
Cherokee
welded.
6.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
32, but yeah, it's a 6. So yeah, it's an old Hershey bar fixed gear 6. So it's not the worst glider in the world, but it's definitely not the best glider in the world either.
Sure. Well, and again, the training took over, and you did what you were supposed to do in that kind of a situation, and it worked. That's all that matters. There's no point in Monday morning quarterbacking this or anything else. And boy, if that doesn't do a number on your head, I don't know what would. But the point is that you did what I would have done, which is just sit back and think about life for a while.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's kind of one of those things where, this is the second actually plane crash I've been through now. I mean, obviously the first one, as we all know, was back when I was a child. I was a passenger, it was nothing I could have done. It was 100% pilot error. I've shared the accident report many, many times. It's just one of those things where even my 9-year-old intuitiveness knew we were going to crash that day. And we did. But ultimately, now that I've been through two or walked away from two of these things, it's just sort of one of those things where it really makes you, anybody who flies single engine, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. You always have that thing in the back of your mind, like, what if the worst thing that could happen happened, what are you going to do? And we all have a plan. Like we've mitigated it. You fly at appropriate altitudes. You fly over long straight roads. You bring life vests. All the things that we do that mitigate the risks of flying in a single engine airplane. And ultimately, the chances of you going down due to a full, complete engine failure are, I should have bought a lottery ticket that day, honestly. I mean, I haven't been struck by lightning yet, so that's cool. But I mean, it's just probably not going to happen to almost everybody who flies an entire career. I mean, most people will never experience a full engine failure. But it does happen. So you have to always have that in the back of your mind. But the thing is, just like anything in life, where a lot of stuff could happen to you every day. You could get hit by a bus. You could get in a bad car accident. You could, fill in the blank with awful, you could have a stroke with no previous health conditions. But we don't go around thinking of those things because you would just be a walking anxiety disorder. I mean, the stress upon your daily life would be unbearable. So, they're in the back of our minds and we do things to avoid that. We look both ways before we step out in front of a bus. We take care of our health, we do whatever. But, but then when something like that does actually happen to you, like it actually did happen now, and it's a thing that's written into your life story, it really changes your relationship with it from, it's probably not going to happen. Yeah, I know it could, but whatever, let's go. No, I mean, that's it. It does happen. And my entire aviation career, I mean, really was fueled largely in part by what had happened to me as a child. And so I always wanted to, do better and know more and not let that ever happen again. But, now that something has happened, like that doesn't happen to most people, it's hard to explain, I guess, which is why I'm starting to ramble, but what it does to your head in terms of now that is a reality. It's not a latent threat. It's a full-blown thing that did happen to you. And it really sort of changes your relationship with your acceptance of risk.
Well, and that's what flying is really all about, is managing risks. And I mean, every day we pre-flight the airplane, including checking to make sure there's enough fuel on board, there's oil, that, as you said, that all the bits and pieces that the pilot and or the instructor can control are as controlled as possible. But then again, sometimes stuff happens, and that's when you're tested, and somebody says, "Well, I just threw this scenario out. So what are you going to do?" And guess what? There's only one right answer, but you don't. I'm revalidating my instructor certificate using the King program right now, and as Martha always says, the problem with a chaotic accident is that it sends the test at you first before you've had the training, perhaps, and it doesn't make any difference. When it happens, you've got to deal with it, and you did. So, and I could see where that would make me not necessarily want to jump in a single-engine airplane for a little bit. I know there are people that might say, "Oh no, the best thing to do is just get right back in there and do it again." Well, perhaps I think that's one option, but there is no one option for everybody, and you chose what was the best option for you.
Yeah. Actually, shout out to John and Martha on that one. I think the idea of managing risk is not new, and it's not theirs necessarily, but they, I think, are the people who brought that to general aviation. I remember when they were writing their articles and they came out with that course. It was probably almost 20 years ago now, about just actually managing risk for general aviation. Like that was, I think they were the ones who put that in the vernacular for GA pilots. So yeah, I'm glad you actually brought that up. And to that point, I did actually fly. I have flown one time since, and it was with Chad in the Meridian, and I almost didn't want to do it. Like I almost didn't get in the plane. Honestly, it was about a week and a half afterwards, and he had come out with the owner, and the plane was sitting there, and he's like, "Yeah, let's go fly, man. Let's get you over this." And that's pretty much what everyone said, was just get back on the horse, get back on the horse. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that is, psychologically speaking, part of the therapy, actually, to get over something, or to get over a phobia, or to get over anything is oh gosh, what's the term? Where you're selective exposure, I think. And so you're just going to expose yourself to it in smaller and increasing doses until you kind of get over it. And so I was like, you know what, you're right. I mean, Texas analogy here for Chad and all them, but saddle up, let's go. So I did. We got in the plane, and it was pretty uncomfortable, but I was like, just do this, man. There's not a better plane and a better guy and a better scenario. I mean, the weather was perfect for me to do this. And so I did, and we flew it, and we did some touch and goes and some taxi backs and some whatever at an airport close by. And I don't know. I mean, it was okay. It was really uncomfortable, but like, I'm glad I did it. But then again, that's also the last time I've flown since then. And that, yes, it's a turboprop, but it's still a single engine aircraft. So, one of the things we talked about, and he's a wildly experienced guy and a close friend. And so, we sort of just talked about, like, hey man, here's the deal. Like, all this stuff we talk about, like risk and what if the engine quits and all that fun stuff, that's all great. But I'm like, let me tell you, man, it sucks 1,000 times worse than you think it's going to. Like, when it does, it's just like anything. You train and train and train in all these scenarios, and then you get thrown out there and it's war, right? Like, war is not the same as training. You've been conditioned so that you react, but at the same time, it's not like training was back at the base. You're out there, man, like, good luck. And you've been thrown to the wolves. So, he said, yeah, I can only imagine, because it's, of course, never happened to him. But we talk about single engine turboprops even, and we even did that episode way back in the day where I read a Dick Collins article about our single engine turbine pilots making a deal with the devil. And, that's something that we've toyed with so many times, and we had a great discussion about it. And I still don't know. But my attitude then was, now I'm still going to do it. But now it's sort of, maybe I won't. And I still haven't quite gotten over the single engine thing. And, it's something for almost 30 years now that I've been okay with. And then suddenly to have that not be okay is just, I think, sort of the toughest part of it of all. And I will go back into it, but man, just changing you're going through that whole mindset shift and coming back is tough. It really is.
I don't disagree with you. And of course, one piece of experience you now have is that that engines really can fail, and what that last 30 seconds is like, and what your brain is doing, what it's trying to do, what it actually does. I mean, and when you tell a student or another pilot about engine failures, you're always going to run into people that go, yeah, but come on. I mean, you hardly ever hear about that kind of thing anymore. And these airplanes are built so well. You're right. But sometimes your number just comes up and it says, guess what, guys? Pop quiz. And you better be ready for it.
Yeah, statistically speaking, it's not going to happen to you. It really isn't. You can go to the airport and go fly and not be weird about it, and don't give yourself an anxiety disorder over it, because statistically speaking, you can pretty much rest assured it's not going to happen to you today.
Well, and when you do meet people, I know a particular person up in my neck of the woods who's experienced a couple of engine failures in the same airplane. And
the same plane. Okay,
yeah.
Well, that's I think we might be talking about something different now.
And then you say, well, wait a minute. One was an engine failure. One was running out of fuel. Now you're getting to the pilot decision-making process where someone said, oh, no, I'm sure this will be okay. Let's just go. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but people don't realize what they're adding to the risk pool by ignoring some of the little signs that pop up.
Yeah, absolutely. For the record, we did not run out of fuel. That is not what happened. No, but you're right. It only takes one little thing, because the problem with all of these things is, whether you want to talk about Swiss cheese or accident chains or whatever, beaten to death analogy you want to talk about, it's like these things, just one little thing upsets the apple cart so bad that it just spirals out of control so quickly. I mean, no matter whether you're single pilot or multi-crew or whatever, obviously that's the beauty of multi-crew, is that you're kind of there to check each other and keep each other calm. And, I guess only one person's handling half the duties and the other person's handling the other half. So maybe to only get half is chaotic. I don't know. But at the same time, yeah, it's one little thing. Remember that, what was it, the Eastern plane that flew into the ground in the Everglades over a light that everybody was so busy looking at?
They got completely focused on that,
Yep.
and they realized later that nobody was flying the airplane. And
And you think about the amount of time that took in order to descend from that altitude at such a low rate that nobody even noticed. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's just but one example. But I mean, there's so many things where, I mean, we actually have to do this in training in air traffic a lot of the times as we do annual recurrent training, and it's usually mostly psychology based. I mean, I realize we're not in an airplane, so that the skill set we have is almost entirely psychological as opposed to physical. I mean, the most physical thing I do is walking up to the tower, and after that, it's lifting binoculars. But anyway, the point is we have to talk about things like this, and one of the things that we do talk about is the startle factor. And
Oh,
when I tell you
yes.
your engine quitting on you, you go from 0 to heart in your throat, and that weird feeling you get when that much adrenaline just got released at once. That really impairs your ability to think, and which is why that training is so important, because it has to just be written into the fabric of what you do, because you're not thinking straight and you're not going to, and you're startled. And it's obviously a big thing, but I mean, there's littler things. Like how many times is somebody startled you, just, it could be your kid or something like that. And not even that big of a deal, but next thing you know, 3 things snowball after that. You're listening to whatever your podcast you're listening to on your radio. And then, somebody cuts you off and you get all mad, and then you end up doing something. And then, in the middle of trying to get back in your lane and give them the finger, you just about swerve into the lane and hit someone else. And that would have been your fault, So it's like that startle factor just really can snowball so quickly, because the amount of psychology behind that, you go from fear, and then as soon as the fear part is over, because you're realizing that you're safe, you go straight into blind rage. Like, who can I blame for this? And then next thing you know, I mean, that's probably the second worst attitude you could have when you're trying to get things under control. So, I mean, I'll tell you, in going through this, we had, I think it was 1 minute and 10 seconds based on our altitude. And yes, people will say, well, why weren't you higher? We'll talk about that in a future episode. But I had just over 1 minute to try to figure it out. But let's be honest, you don't have that whole minute to try to figure it out, because in the last 15, 20, 30 seconds of that, you're trying to shut everything down and put it on the ground. You're no longer troubleshooting. So really, we had about 20 seconds of try to fix it, and then it was just accept it. And, when it first happened, it was like, whoa, hey, what's going on? And for me, that wasn't actually, it woke me up. I mean, I wasn't complacent. I was getting the ATIS and I was about to call the tower. I mean, I was, plenty busy, but I wasn't in hyper alert mode. I was in just regular, let's approach the airport mode. And as my time as a multi-engine instructor, I've had engines surge on me before after you shut them down. It surprises you, but there's pull the mixture back and it'll do it, because the fuel selector doesn't always cut it off right, or there's a little bit of residual stuck in there. So whatever. But we had this one airplane where it would always do that. It was, I think, the left engine. If you shut it off with the selector, my goal was, or my thing was, I'd always do it when someone was in the middle of their steep turn, so they weren't paying attention. I'd reach down and put the selector in the off. And then, right about when they were done with it, and I'm like, all right, scan for the next thing, and let's do some, let's set up for slow flight. The left engine would just cut out, and it would start surging though. So I had to be real fast on the mixture on that left one, because I knew what would happen. So I kind of just went into that mode, like, okay, I can fix a surging engine. I'm in a single engine airplane, So I went into fix it mode. And then I was like, oh, best glide. Okay, great. Do all that. You'll put on that pump. I mean, I yelled at him, like, turn on the pump, turn on the pump. Right after I yelled, wait, did you do that? But then as we started going down, I thought I had a pretty good landing site picked out. And I was just going to turn right in there and be like, wow, man, I bet we'll be on the news over this one, not almost as a passing joke, but like I thought we had it under control. And then it became real apparent we weren't going to make the field because it was falling out of the sky too fast. And I went to my second option, which was, I'll be generic here, let's call it a road. And right when it became apparent that we were not going to make the turn into the first field that I had picked, that's when the reality hit me. And I went from I'll fix this. Oh, the engine's surging, whatever. I'll do this or that. Nope. Now, then the fear kicked in. And right then, that was a moment I got scared. And I remember I even looked down. I said, look, man, I'm really scared right now. I'm doing the best I can. And he just looked at me. He's like, I know, man, I know. And at that point, I committed to the road. We started shutting everything down. And it came out okay. But, that second when that hits you, I think I may have blacked out for about 5 seconds after that, because I remember saying that, and I kind of remember turning final to the road. And then the next thing you know, it was putting it down on the road. And that amount of time is nothing. And yet it seemed like forever. And it's one of those things where time loses meaning, and you cannot think rationally when time loses meaning. I'm like, I'm sorry. You can't do it. It's not going to happen. So again, the training was there to shut the fuel off, shut everything off, turn off the master. And that was that. And then the second we landed, we skidded, we ended up hitting a median. One of the wings broke off. There's fuel everywhere. And at that point, again, it was just the training of just get out, get out, get out. There's fuel everywhere. And the funny thing was, the owner told me, and we'll again bring him on in a future episode once everything's cleared out. But he told me that was a moment he finally got scared, was when I was yelling at him to get out of the plane, because he was stunned, and he was like, okay, it was when we hit the road and came to a stop that he finally got scared, and I was already over it at that point, and I was just yelling at him to get out. So, I guess the tired point I'm making is the amount of psychology when there's one of these things happening to you is just beyond comprehension. And all those procedures and, I guess, getting out the SOP or whatever, not only works if you've got the time, but you have to have this stuff just rationalized down to exactly what you're going to do. And then when that doesn't work, it's all just memory items, and if you have a second to do a checklist, cool, do it. But we did not. But at any rate, we mitigated as much as we could, and I'm glad it happened the way it did. But, to your point, it's just the psychology in the moment is not something that you can overcome. It really isn't.
Well, I think, too, that you should know, if you talk to flight attendants, anybody that's been through an accident, and I've communicated with a couple of them, they say that it's once the airplane is down, one of the attendants, if not more than one, will start screaming at the passengers, "Get out, get out, get out." Just like you did. And I've heard people say, well, gee, why do you need to scream? Because people are stunned. They just sit there. And then people start doing stupid stuff like, well, excuse me, let me get my overhead bag. And they have to yell, leave the bags. But again, and if that's what you have to do to get the people going and get them out and get them away from danger, then that's what you have to do. But again, you only know, as the king said again, the test comes first, and the training or the lesson comes later. And some people do well, and it sounds like you obviously did, along with your friend. Some people don't fare so well.
Yeah, that's it. And it's funny though, is that was exactly, I guess, sort of what I was trying to describe is, when you're the one, like the yoke is in your hands and you're the one who just wrestled the thing down, you're still in go mode the entire time. The crew is in go mode, but the passenger, which the guy I was with effectively was at that point, is not in go mode. They're in stunned, oh my God mode. And, he wasn't, he told me later, he wasn't really thinking about fire or anything like that. He was just, he was just trying to process what had just happened. And, all I could think about was the amount of fuel I just saw spew out of the wing that just broke off, that, we need to get out of this thing in a hurry. And especially, in all my college courses back in the day at Purdue and aviation and all that, you talk about the survivability of an aircraft accident, and many accidents are in fact survivable. But then the post-crash fire or inability to evacuate the aircraft is what gets the people. And beyond being one of the most horrifying things I've ever heard, it's true. And that's just it, is like you said, the crew is in go mode and they jump into action and start yelling and getting everyone out. But to everyone else, they're in stunned mode and they need to be snapped out of it and literally dragged out if that's what it takes. But, actually, I even remember that's one of the strongest memories I have of the crash I was in as a child, is that the guy who crashed the plane, his wife was in the passenger seat and his daughter was sitting next to me. So when that happened, he was the most injured of all because, he was at the controls. His face ended up actually hitting the panel and some other things, but the plane flipped over upside down in that case. But what he did was he managed to unhook his seatbelt and get out, and he was trying to dig people out through the baggage compartment because he was still in go mode. And I remember coming to just hanging upside down, and it was in a 210, so I was in the very back seat. So if you're in the very back seat of one of those and you look straight up, there's a window above you. And so there was, obviously it was broken, and there was a little tuft of grass, and there was actually a bug that was alive, and it was like crawling around on the other side of the glass. And I was, I had just barely processed what had happened before I felt, someone basically trying to grab my legs because they were trying to pull us out the baggage compartment. But you think about the amount of time it probably took him to get back there. It could have been a minute or two. And I wouldn't know because in that case, I was a passenger and I was in stun mode. So, call it what you want. It's definitely just your perspective on the accident or where you were at the time is going to really affect the outcome of it. But the most important part is, in fact, getting out, because that post-flight fire that could break out. I mean, avgas is, my God, it's like the most volatile thing in the world. And if you don't get out, that could go south real fast. I mean, the thought of surviving a horrifying crash and then burning up afterwards is just, I don't want to think about that, but that's often what happens. And the most important thing is that crew goes into action and gets them out. But, being in stun mode or startle mode, you're not going to be at your best.
Well, and think about how people that are new to flying may react to this discussion. I mean, it might scare them, really frighten them to the point they say, I don't think I want to do that. But you cannot ignore the risk. I mean that I sent you a picture the other day. For people that don't know, I'm about 137. I think I'm going to be 137 on my next birthday, and so I sent you a picture of the GCA radar unit where I did my first assignment in the Air Force. That was ground controlled approach, precision radar. In those days, ILS didn't even exist. And the only way there was a precision approach was to talk them down. We'll get into that in another episode. But the point was that we were located maybe 200 feet to the side of the runway, and we had an air base with fighter jets on it, supersonic fighter aircraft, and sometimes stuff happens. And if the guy in the tower said, "Holy smokes, there's an airplane headed for the GCA," they could blow off a klaxon horn, and you were trained to bail out, and it wasn't. Well, let's see. What do you think that? Oh, is that a real? Oh no, that's probably a false alarm, or you just bailed, because if you didn't, the chances of you living were much reduced. And I didn't have any close calls myself, but I know some guys that did, and they just relied on their training. But holy smokes, they were sitting there later going, because it's fight or flight. I mean, it's what your body does when it's put into a scary situation. Did it make me say, I don't want to be in that place. I should be up in the tower where it's much removed from the runway. No, I knew that was my place. That was what I'd been trained to do. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It's just, it came with the territory. And again, it's like flying single engine 135, in a Bonanza, let's say. Could the worst happen? Sure, it could. Absolutely, it could. But if you thought about all of this stuff, as you said, every second you would be a basket case. You'd be Mr. or Miss Anxiety, and it's about balancing the risk. And so you took some time off. It's no big deal. You'll go back to it when you're ready. And again, it doesn't mean that what we're doing is unsafe, but it does have risks. So does driving a Jaguar around a racetrack. In a race, or hot air ballooning, or skydiving. I mean, they all have risks, but you try to minimize the risk as best you can. And if you get caught with something unexpected, you do the best you can based on the training that you have.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of weird, like the whole. Maybe I'll go ahead and share this. What the heck? So that first night when I finally got home, I spent the whole day standing there on again, we'll be general, the side of the road. It was more than a road; it caused an amazing traffic jam, and if you're from San Diego, I'm sorry, but it happened such that after all that. And sitting there watching the news and all the media coverage of it, because you better believe it was the top story on every news channel that day. Actually, one of the couples that witnessed the accident went on one of the local news stations the next morning on their morning show to tell the hosts all about their crazy experience of the plane coming down from the sky the next day. And it was, I'm like, all right, you guys got your 15 minutes. You're welcome. But, that first night, I had the attitude of, man, we really handled that. Cool. The system works, I felt good. But I'll tell you, what really ruined it for me was the next morning, my friend, the owner, the guy that was with me, he called me and he had come up with this scenario in his head, which has since been disproven, but basically kind of ended up having it be like our fault, and I was like, man, you are crazy. No, there's no chance that that's what happened, is what I told him. And, we hung up. And then of course because he called me like 4 a.m. when he couldn't sleep, of course. And I was like, man, you go to bed. But then the next day, it sat with me like, oh my God, that is a possibility, right? And because you're all second guessing yourself, rehashing it, and just going through all the things that you could or couldn't have done, or should or shouldn't have done, or whatever, and completely losing the plot on the fact that you did the best you could, and it actually worked out, and it was great. Ultimately there was minimal property damage and everybody walked away. That's the best you can do. That is the best outcome you could possibly have. But of course that all goes out the window when you start ruminating. So then it started getting under my skin. And I'll tell you what, had that, call not happened, had that conversation with him about maybe this was in a way our fault. Had that not happened, I probably would have been flying the next week. Been like, yeah, man, that's how you do it. Right? That's how you do it, son. But that just did something to me, I guess. And it got under my skin in a way where eventually, again, I'm sorry to be generic, but the thing that he proposed clearly did not happen. It clearly was not what happened. And that was never the case. But the fact that it was able to get under our skin and we just sat there and brooded about it for so long was really, I think, what changed my attitude from, I will get right back on that horse because I know how to handle this, and I did handle it, and I've proven to myself and anybody who was questioning that, not that there was, but you go through this stuff in your head. I guess it's your ego protecting itself or whatever, but you handled it and you move on. It's like, yeah, that's what's up. But then that conversation is what changed it for me. That's when I got to, oh my God, did we cause it? No, we didn't. And then of course it was proven we did not. But it just like set something in motion in my mind and my psychology that was what made it hard for me to get over. And, now since again, it's been just disproven so many times and, the ultimate cause will come out in due time and so forth. I can go back to, yes, we handled it and that's that. No ego, no nothing. It's a thing. We lived, we walked, minimal damage. Everybody's cool. Let's just move on with our lives. but how we're going to get back on with it. And only now am I finally feeling that way again. And that little change that happened the morning after, 12 hours later, suddenly spiked me off into this sort of like alternate psychology that has now taken 6 months to sort of get over. And ultimately that, plus I think just the last couple of years we've all had to endure, just really changed it from what would have been, I think, an easier thing to get over, to something that's not. It's like hashtag, but did you die? Well, no. And that would have been the attitude before. But man, we handled that. But, something about that, it just takes the wrong thing getting said at the wrong time, and suddenly you're in a whole different place.
Yeah, that's true. But I think you can't under explain this with that last phrase. But did anybody die? No. And you know why? Because you did it right. You did it well. It may not have been the way that someone else that knows you would have dealt with it, or I'm sure you're going to hear well, why didn't you try this? Or why? But you know what? It doesn't matter, because that was the test, and that was how you did, and it worked. And anybody, again, that thinks, I remember getting yelled at early on in my, after I had my CFI, that I had the audacity to tell somebody in a 150 that, treat this airplane with respect. Because people say, oh, it's a 150, come on, it's a 100-horse engine, it's a bunch of metal, and you go, and no big deal. I said, this airplane will take your life and the life of anybody who's in this other seat if you're not careful, if you're not paying attention. And somebody yelled at me and said, are you kidding? This guy's never going to come back. And I said, well, I was just trying to be realistic with him. I mean, that so many people think it's all, it's safer than driving a car. Well, it's not safer than driving a car. I mean, and, but it is what it is, and you can't make it into something you want it to be just by ignoring the facts. And but all I know is that I'm glad you're here talking to me about this right now, rather than me thinking about this 6 months later. After I saw the photos and whatever, thinking that something really terrible might have happened. But that's not where it went.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. You talk about how do you bring up the concept of risk with a prospective student or client, or just friend who's thinking of doing it, and it's very interesting, because I think you have to think or take into account why it is that they're doing this, and at what stage of the game they're in. And I remember, when it comes to say you're at a club, right? And you're a club instructor, and someone comes in and they want to learn how to fly, or I've had father sons come in a couple times. Hey, my son's looking to fly, and the dad was doing all the due diligence to pick him out a good instructor and all that. And the way you're going to talk about risk to the father versus the way you're going to talk about risk to the son, who is a teenager in the case I'm talking about. But I mean, it's a theoretical example, or at the flight school, same thing, I guess, would be. Versus if it's somebody who's already signed on, like hook, line, and sinker, like at a big 141 school where they finance you through, or an ab initio program, or like a collegiate program or something like that. And I'm actually going to share two quotes right now. I was going to save these for something else, and maybe I will bring them up again. But I have had, and this was at Purdue. I'm not going to say the names of the professors because I haven't okayed this with them, obviously, because it's coming up right now. But two of my absolute favorite professors I've had there are two of the people. I mean, these are grown men that I've actually seen completely break down and have to leave a classroom and come back 5 minutes later after they've collected themselves in front of an entire class of students. And these the stories that got them to that point were horrifying, and these experiences that they had, but they wanted to share these things. And I guess the reason I'm saying this is because, sort of much like me sharing this experience, I hope somebody gets something from it. And I think that a lot of the kids in that program, I mean, you're talking to a bunch of 22-year-olds, that have, again, fallen for aviation hook, line, and sinker. And that's great. I'm a card-carrying member. I'm in the class and happy to be there with them. But that don't necessarily understand the potential risk. And the first one was the guy who was in charge of all of the flight ops. And about a year or two before I got there, there was a fatal crash. It was a Duchess. And ultimately what had happened was it was a simulated engine failure too soon after takeoff. And we all know exactly, now that I've said that, what happened. I mean, we don't need to rehash how that goes down, but you kill the engine too quick after takeoff. The student's not ready, reacts just a little bit wrong. Thing VMC rolls, the end. There's no recovering from that. But the problem is you don't realize that, and this is the way he said that, he's like, I was the person who had to call those people's parents, and he pretty much just like stopped and just walked out. And he comes back in a few minutes later and he's like, it still bothers me. And it had been a few years. It was only a couple, but you think about having to be the person who has to make that phone call. 2 of those phone calls, actually, back to back. And then the second one was, it wasn't even a flying class. It was a management class, but aviation management was the major study I went through. One of the professors, one of the most loved professors in the program, actually, he had a fun name and everything, but he had a friend die in a Mooney accident in Indiana, and I forget the particulars of it, but it was literally the guy's best friend. And so he was getting a little worked up, like, okay, look, I don't know if I want to tell this. You can tell when somebody's like on the brink of telling you the story or not telling you. And he went for it, and I still respect him to this day for doing that. But he literally just, he kind of stopped. He looked at the classroom full of these pilots that are like, oh, yeah, I'm doing some aerobatics this weekend, or, oh, I got to do spins in the Chipmunk or whatever. And he just straight up took it down. He's like, look, you all think aviation is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it is dangerous as hell. And it killed my best friend. And everybody just like, shut up. I mean, I know for probably half the people in this room, it was the first time they'd ever just straight up been told what's going on in that direct of a manner. But, that quote will live with me forever, and I'm not going to sit here on this podcast and doing what I do and all this on a public platform saying that it's so dangerous you shouldn't do it or something like that. It is not. But the whole rest of this conversation in context shows that if you do not properly mitigate the risks, it can be. So what do we do? Well, we do not do engine failures at 400 AGL in a multi-engine aircraft. You just don't. That's what simulators are for. You do it up at altitude. You do what you can, but you just don't do those things. And then whatever happened to this guy in the Mooney, I don't know. But, there was probably some chain of events leading up to that. But, to have 2 professors, it was, I think in the same year, have to just stop a class and be like, yo, reality check in such a blunt manner was something that will always be with me. And, that's not what I'm trying to do here, but, I am trying to share these experiences and these quotes and these, things that I was able to participate in and in college and all that, and share them with as many people now as I possibly can, because only the maybe 17 of us in the classroom that day heard those things. But, now thousands of people are going to hear it. And I hope that, people get the right message from that it's just like anything, like using a knife. I cut up an onion the other day when I was cooking, but I'm careful with a knife. I know how to use it, and I'll be careful with a 152. I know how to use that as well. And bad things can happen, but ultimately the psychology of what you're doing is the most important part. And if you have the right attitude to approach it, the right mindset, the right skills and training and all that, you will probably be just fine. And flying aviation, it might be the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'll sit up here and say that. But you're right. If you're not careful, it can be dangerous as hell. So,
well, and for a good example of that, I think people should go out and watch the Top Gun movie, because that movie starts with a scenario of a couple of naval fighter pilots that were out on patrol that were jumped by a couple of MiGs, and they did everything they were supposed to do, and yet one of the pilots his encounter with the Meg was so realistic, so oh my gosh, this is really the way it works. That when they get back to the ship, the guy goes to the commanding officer, takes off his wings, and tosses them on his desk and says, "I'm done. I almost made my wife a widow, and I because something snapped in that guy." And I'm sure there are people in aviation or in race car driving or in scuba diving that have had something happen to them, and they say, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't take this risk any longer." And it happens, but it doesn't mean that entire event, that life experience is bad, and that it's absolutely life threatening at every point. We go back to risk management. It really is. I mean, that's why we never let a student solo on a day with the winds, a crosswind, a gusty crosswind, of 25 knots or something like that, or weather that's, it's 1100 broken and 3-4 miles visibility. No, because we're smart enough to say, nah, the risks are too great. Something could come in and take over, and this person's not going to be ready to cope with it. And no, we're just not going to do it. And you put it off to another day until the conditions are better and the risk is less. But again, once you've had an experience like that, I mean, I've had a couple of experiences. I mean, we'll talk about it on another time. But and once it's happened to you, you find a newfound respect for that airplane and flying and the decision process that all of us go through, and you either keep going or you don't. And I don't feel bad when somebody said, it just wasn't for me. Okay, that's great, but they thought about it. But there are so many of us that are lifelong pilots that have enjoyed it, that even after a couple of close calls, we came back for more. But we're always thinking in the back of our minds, hey, this could happen or that could happen. And we're not saying, oh, it's just some crazy thing they tell you in a book, but it's not realistic. And oh yeah, it is actually. And that actually works for me. It helps me be more comfortable with what I'm doing, and so that I don't make really stupid decisions. I mean, I still make some minor stupid decisions, but hopefully not major ones. And hopefully that's the way it's going to work for you.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of funny. Like they use the Top Gun analogy because I literally I was like, is this my cougar moment?
Yeah.
Am I going to lose it and turn in my wings or not? And then, you look at what Maverick went through. And I mean, yes, on one hand, I mean, that movie gets cheesier every time I see it. But at the same time, you can't stop watching it. And there is a reasonably deeper storyline in there. When you look at how Maverick first, he was just the hot shot. There was somebody better than him. It was Cougar. He was number one, but Cougar lost it and turned in his wings. Now you two are number one. You know what I mean? But it's somebody was always better than him, whether it was Cougar or Iceman or whatever. And then eventually, though, it was because, his Maverick attitude was kind of what was holding him back. And then ultimately, he went from buzzing the tower as a joke to, he almost ruins Goose's career. Then Goose ends up dying again after some crazy stuff that he does. And then he goes through the entire process of figuring out what happened to his dad and all this other stuff. And, eventually gets over himself and turns out that he's as good a pilot as anyone. And by the end of it, it's, Iceman wants, you can be my wingman, you know what I mean? And it's like, there's this whole psychological process that everyone's going to go through when they have something bad happen to them in aviation. And everyone's going to do it differently. And this is not going to be a Cougar moment for me. I'm not going to turn in my wings, but there was a process to coming back. That's for sure.
Well, and I think that people that are going to listen to this episode are going to think, wow, those guys are really depressed. No, actually, we're not. We're being, though, is very realistic. And if you haven't thought that flying could have the same risks as a skydiving accident or scuba diving or mountain climbing, you are fooling yourself. And once you come to grips with it, once you're realistic with it, most people can cope with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, thank you for saying that. And see, this is why. See, this is what Cougar needed, and this is why you're here, because you're my safety blanket, and thank you for bringing that back. But yeah, that is not why we're here. This is not to be a depressing episode, or God, I hate to even say another depressing episode, but this is really the one where I want to turn the corner back to something. It'll never be exactly what it once was here on the show, but I mean, it'll be good. Hopefully even better, actually. There's an episode going to come out after this that I recorded the other day, and well, now you all know that, but with somebody from aviation. I won't ruin the story, but that is one of the most passionate people I've met in aviation, especially on the air traffic side. And that coming back, doing that episode, and then this one as well, and so many other things that have happened have really just made it such a joy to stand in front of this microphone again. So yeah, this is not meant to be a dark thing. It's meant to be a very real thing. And that's ultimately on this show. I don't want to just make commodity content for people. And I have not yet, and I never will. And everything that goes out on this show, I want to be valuable and have a story behind it. And that's a true story, of course. But I mean, that's what this is. And I don't want it to get anyone down. I actually want it to be like, okay, cool. Wow. That's a reality check. But, at the same time, I think this might be a good time. When you hear the next episode, you're going to see that the enthusiasm back on that one. It was a joy to record, and I can't wait to share it with you all next week. But there have been a lot of people that listen to this show that have actually contacted me throughout the last 6 months or so. And I actually want to give them some credit here for reaching out to me, because I really appreciate you guys doing this. And it really has it kept me motivated to come back when I felt that the time was right. The first one of them is Lyman Howard, and he sent me an email. It says, "I hope you're doing well. Your feed of archived episodes seems to have dropped off Pocket Cast." Actually, a fun side note, my media host actually went out of business. So for those of you in December that couldn't get the episodes in the back catalog, that's been fixed. But I'm starting over on a new media host. Hopefully it looks the same to everybody. But that was another thing that happened in here. But he said, "Perhaps you hung up your podcasting spurs. Anyway, wishing you a fantastic year. Fingers crossed you get back to podcasting. But if not, just letting you know it's always been top notch. I appreciate the production effort you put into it for so many years. And that SR-71 series and the Concorde were pure gold. And as were your conversations with Chad. Take care, Lyman Howard up in the SF Bay Area." And, getting these emails like that were really nice. I told him what happened and so forth, and gave him a link to get to some of the old stuff. But he ended up writing back, "Oh my gosh, that is a valid reason as ever to take the sidelines for a couple months. But thank goodness you're okay. Never a dull moment in this life, is there? Sometimes it's a good thing to take a step back and have a breather, and you can reassess from a distance, and other opportunities can be pursued in that way, such as helping Rob with his projects and things like that. So selfishly, it's a relief to hear you'll be back at podcasting, and that your archive will be back up again. But I'm just grateful to have you as a source of aviation material to geek out on. And he's a partner in an aircraft up there, and just a whole lifestyle for him. So anyway, thanks for spending so much time and keeping us all safe working the FAA tower. And anything you do in the podcasting world is gravy. Stay safe." So, it's emails like that really made it, I guess it just, it took the sting out of some of this, and really was able to sort of get me in the mindset of wanting to get back in here. And there were a couple others too. Let's see here. Who's next? Oh, actually just got one the other day from Christian Hansis. He said, "Hey, how are you? I miss your podcast when it's running, and hope you're doing well. You still teaching flying and controlling?" Well, Christian, appreciate the email, and here's your answer. And there were a couple of others here. Actually, one guy sent me one on Instagram, Jared La Barbera. I hope I got your name pronounced right there, Jared. But he said, "Hey, I fly out of West Coast Delta, and a mutual friend of ours named Kelton actually introduced me to your podcast. He says, I've grown to really enjoy it, but I know you haven't recorded much lately. I'm aware that life happens sometimes, so maybe that's why. But hoping I can be some encouragement to you to continue with the podcast if you have the time. I'm currently finishing up my instrument. And while working on that, I was trying to find other ways to keep me motivated. And that's when I began my search for aviation-like podcasts. And yours is the one that kept me going and gave me that little push to continue on with my training and be the best pilot I can. So hopefully we'll hear from you soon in one way or another. So again, Jared, thank you so much for reaching out. He actually offered to take me on a little flight, as even if I wasn't, PIC, all my currencies have actually elapsed. But he's like, hey, anything you want to do, I'd be happy to do it. So again, thank you so much, Jared. And here we are. And, to that point, there's been a couple of people that have reached out on the mic, like some shout outs that just fly through from another airport, and just a quick, hey, love the last episode. Hope you send out some more soon. And I can't get them all on tape, but to anybody that gave me a shout out on the air, I really do appreciate that. One other one was from Elliot Cox, the writing flyer. If you guys haven't seen him, he actually writes for a couple different places, but you'll see him on Airfax Journal. If you want to go there, he's written a lot. But he says, man, really sorry to hear all that happened to you, but glad you're okay. And as a friend of his said, if you're not creating it, you're living it. So pay attention. And I thought that was a kind of a fun quote to share. But if you're not creating it, you're living it. So I wanted to get that one out there. And Elliot, thank you for that email and that wonderful quote. What do you think of that one?
I like that quite a bit. I think that tops Martha King's quote.
Man, that's a good one. Sorry, Martha.
Well,
Martha has a lot of good quotes, though. She really does. She has a bank of good quotes. You know what my favorite Martha quote of all time is?
What's that?
At the end of every video, keep the dirty side down and please stay out of the trees.
Yeah, that's right. I've often wanted to ask them where the trees came from. I wondered if they're really nice folks. If you ever have an opportunity to meet them, I had a chance to fly with them a few years ago. They had me as a guest at their home overnight, and they're just absolutely warm, wonderful people. And when you think they can't be any nicer, they were even nicer. And so it was just really fun. So again, if you have an opportunity to meet John and Martha King, when you see them, go up and tell them your story, and they'll love to hear it. And they'll probably tell you to stay out of the trees too.
Oh, I didn't hit any trees. A couple of cars, but no trees.
That's good. Well, yeah. So what kind of stories do you think might lie ahead for the podcasting on a plane show?
Well, that's a good question. I want to put out more content just in general, and again, like I've always said, I don't do commodity type content. I mean, there are plenty of places to get your news, and they're all wonderful, and I'm not trying to encroach on that at all. I listen to all the news shows as well myself. My goal is not to make one of them. And I don't do a whole lot of, I do shop talk, definitely, but I don't do just air traffic Q&A, but we all know the podcast you can go to get that one. But I want to share stories. So there will always be a story behind everything that comes here. I mean, obviously, look, you know how many times I've been told that Spy Week is, I know I'm very aware, everybody, yes, that there is no way I will ever top Spy Week, and that's fine. And the only thing that's probably going to come close is Concord Week. And again, I may never top that, so okay. But at the same time, if we could equal it in the future, that would be amazing. But obviously not every episode is going to be Spy Week or Concord Week. But nonetheless, the things I want to share are stories, or at least, even if they're business related, things that can help people, that are actionable, that not only will entertain them, but actually get maybe like, here's something you can do. So I don't want to say the one I'm going to record on this coming Monday, but I have one coming up with, there's a big partnership that just kind of went down in the industry between a large training program and an aircraft manufacturer. And on one hand, that's just a business deal. But on the other hand, it's not actually, because it provides a complete start to finish, soup to nuts ab initio program to a U.S. major, which is a big deal. I mean, in Asia, okay, different story. That happens all the time, right? We all know that. But ab initio in the U.S. is not quite the same. So I'm going to be sharing that story. And and things like that. So, anybody who has good story ideas, I'm always actually open to hearing them. I mean, I'm a one-man business here, or one-stop shop, I guess. So I won't quite make, I can't make This American Life over again, but I can do my best. And the type of content I want to bring is things like that. So in the future, I want to have people on such as yourself, Rob, that have a wealth of experience in aviation that can, really give people a lot to think about. And that's something that I always want to do is things that people can think about as well, not just here's what happened. Okay, great, moving on. I'm informed, but to actually more stimulate your thoughts than just give you answers. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely, and I think that we all try that. In fact, I'm as you and I have spoken. I'm working on a podcast myself, and do you know what? I don't try to. I've got a dozen or so topics in the bag that I'm working on, but I don't try to make shows that. Oh, I wonder if everybody's going to love this one, or can I top the podcasting on a plane? Concord Week, or can I beat Max Trescott when he did blah, blah. No, I'm going to tell stories. I've been telling stories all my life as a writer, and there's stories that are important to me. If you hear them and something clicks in your mind because of that, oh wow, that's absolutely great. If it doesn't, well, hey, maybe next time. And I think that's the way you have to go. And before you know it, you'll have created another Concord Week or Spy Week or, well, I don't know what you would call the next one.
I don't know either. But you know what? Who is going to come back that everyone I think is going to be stoked on it? Rich Pickett. He'll be back.
He's always fun. I mean, talk about a guy with multiple talents. And the multiple experiences. I mean, I passed on that episode of yours when he talked about getting COVID, and to a lot of friends who thought it was all silly thing. But I mean, Rich almost died. He really did, and
yeah, not in a hypothetically like, oh man, I almost died. I was so sick, man. But no, like literally, almost died.
Exactly.
Nobody expected him to actually pull through that.
No, and but those are the kind of stories that NPR has what they call a driveway moment, where you get home and you should turn off the radio or whatever, and you go, no wait, I've got to hear how this ends because I'm just so wrapped up in it. Those are the kinds of things we'll strive for. Sometimes we'll win and be successful at that. Sometimes we'll fall flat on our face, but we try.
Absolutely. And what the heck? What's your podcast going to be, Rob? What are you working on?
It's called Stories About Flying. It's going to be stories that I've run across in my time that I still think are just really interesting, really cool. Some are about people, some are about situations, and some are about near fatal situations. And I'm adding my own little piece. Sometimes it'll be what you're doing, having somebody on the show to help talk through a situation. Sometimes it won't, but you know what? I'm doing it because I want to do it. I've always wanted to do it, and I'm getting tired of people like you and Max Trescott and all kinds of other people getting all the hits on social media, which I don't. What is social media again? Should I be on that?
I think we can't both do this, man.
Oh,
you know that, right?
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, no, there's not room for both of us.
I didn't get that memo.
I'm going to send some goons over to your house to intimidate you out of the podcasting industry here in about the next couple of days. Watch your back.
Thank you, and I'm so glad I was able to record this with you, and it's been nice talking with you and to your audience, and someday maybe I'll be back if I'm lucky.
Yeah, we'll see about it. Anyway, well, you know what? Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear the stories. I know your experience goes way back since you're 137 now. So obviously,
But I look good. I look good for
you do.
137.
You do. You do. Well, no, but
really do.
with obviously as a professional storyteller, you are going to be putting out some stuff that I think we can all be very, very excited about in the near future. So I can't wait to hear it.
And to make people that may say, what's the secret to long life? And I subscribe to the George Burns philosophy. And George Burns, for those of you who are not old enough to remember, was a top-notch comedian in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. And he used to do a radio show with his wife, Gracie Allen, called Burns and Allen. They took pot shots at each other. It was really funny. But somebody asked George Burns one time, just after he turned 100, what the secret to long life was. And you know what he said? Keep breathing. And I thought, I like that. It's so fundamental. I can live with that. That's something that any of us can live with. And so that's my philosophy.
Yeah, no, hey, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking this one through with me. It's been a sort of a long time coming, and I appreciate you kind of being here to let me walk through it.
Well, you know what? I missed your show myself, and as you know, there's been more than one occasion where I would give you a ring or something and say, "So, what's going on out by you?" Not wanting to nudge you, but just to see how you were doing, because I like what you do. And even though you told me there's no room in this town for both of us, I think there is.
Well, there you go. That's what's up. So thanks again to Rob for joining me on this one. And thank you all again who sent in emails and all the kind words of encouragement when I was away. One thing that I did a lot of during that time that I didn't mention in the interview was I did a ton of bike rides, actually. I've always been a cyclist. It's kind of my preferred form of exercise. But while I was away, I really got into the sport of the thing. And I thought a fun way to interact for all of us that are athletes, at least, cyclists, runners, swimmers, anybody who uses Strava, really. Follow me on Strava. I think it'd be kind of fun. And also any other social media at Podcast on a Plane or Podcasting on a Plane, pretty much across the board. The podcast is 100% listener supported, and I'd kind of like to keep it that way. So if you have the means and you find value in it, I would really appreciate having you on board as a patron. You get episodes early and sometimes other fun stuff too. So if you want to be a supporter, head over to Podcasting on a Plane and click on support this show. If you're not into that recurring thing, I totally understand. There's a PayPal link for whatever you feel is right. Or buymeacoffee.com/Bravo Golf spelled out. Brandon at Podcasting on the Plane is where you can send your thoughts, or you could also use your smartphone and record something, or the SpeakPipe widget that pops up when you visit podcastingonaplane.com to record me something, and let me know if you want it on the show. As always, I thank you so much for your support in whatever form it takes, and for listening to this show and passing along the word about this or any other aviation podcast to a friend. Well, that's all for now. Your frequency change is approved until next time, and report back on this frequency for the next episode. Good day.